Hello and welcome to Paint Yourself into the Picture, healing conversations to help us create the best picture of our lives. I'm Reba and I'm so glad you're here, and today we're meeting for another episode of Tea with Reba. And this is where I read some of my recent writings, and today I'd like to read you a continuation of my writing about the book of Esther. I'm very fascinated by Queen Esther's story. So this one is called Why the Purim Story Stays in the Picture. The sage Rambam tells us that all the books of the Hebrew Bible will be nullified after the coming of the Messiah, except for the 5 books of Moses and the book of Esther, aka the Purim story. On a Kabbalistic level, the 5 books of Moses are said to contain all the wisdom that ever was or ever will be. So their persistence is understandable. But why are we asked to continue reciting the Purim story even after the arrival of the Messiah? The rather brief book of Esther seems an odd choice, especially as it doesn't mention God's name even once. For several years now, I've been enamored of Esther's story. Reading the Purim story this year, I was excited to stumble upon a few more clues as to why the book of Esther may be so vital to our ongoing story. I already loved Esther for her courage and wisdom. I saw in her a model for creating miracles in our lives as she walked the steps from orphan to queen to hero, all the while creating miracles for herself and for her people. This Purim, another layer of the story was peeled back. As I read again how Esther stood before the king and how he extended his scepter to her in support of her petition, my mind traveled back to the many interviews I conducted this year on the topic of the divine feminine, and in particular to my interview with Carla Sanders. Carla spoke of what women's empowerment and a reconceived role for men might look like. She shared a painting in which women stood in a great circle with 4 men in 4 corners, each holding a staff, functioning as pillars of support for the women. This is imagery also found in Native American and Inuit ceremony and art. For the first time this Purim, I noticed that King SHE-roes extended his golden scepter to Esther not once, but twice, each time increasing his support for her requests. I was intrigued to take a closer look at the delineation of leading and supporting roles of men and women in the drama. The story opens with a scene of lavish feasting and drinking, with the men firmly in charge. The king commands his queen, Vashti, to appear before the crowd as he wishes to show off her beauty. When she refuses, the king's advisor, Haman, urges the king to kill her, lest the king become a laughingstock and the queen become an example of impunity to all the other women of the realm. For his advice, Haman is raised to the position of chief advisor, whereupon he declares that all must bow down to him in acknowledgement of the king's power. On the other side of town, we see Esther, coached by her uncle Mordecai, being groomed to take a leadership position. We will also see Mordecai refusing to bow down to Haman, a transgression for which he is later thrown into jail. So far, though, the Haman-King partnership holds sway. Haman with a new and powerful position, the king with a new wife, Esther, and full confidence in his top advisor. Yet Haman cannot rest, for Mordecai still refuses to bow down to him. Haman's lust for power knows no bounds. Not only does he want Mordecai brought low, he asks the king for 10,000 silver talents to pay for the annihilation of all of Mordecai's people. He appeals again to the king's ego, citing Mordecai's refusal to bow. He tells the king they do not observe even the king's laws. Therefore, it is not befitting the king to tolerate them. The king acquiesces to this astonishing request and quickly grants the money and his permission to act against Mordecai's people as Haman sees fit. Together on this moral precipice, Haman and the king stand ready to take their quest for domination to its ultimate horrendous conclusion. This ego-fueled situation seems to call forth a shift towards the feminine. The story juxtaposes two examples of feminine self-determination. In the first example, Vashti refused the king's summons. In the second, Esther determined to go into the king even though it is unlawful to appear before the king if not summoned. How is Esther's disobedience different from Vashti's? Both women risked their lives, yet they reap opposite results. Vashti's act was a contest of wills, and her only possible gain was in terms of controlling the relationship. In contrast, Esther put aside personal welfare. Her famous quote is, "If I die, I die," in service to a cause greater than personal gain. Vashti's power play cost her her head. Esther's action occasioned the king's first offering of his scepter, his staff of support, saying, "What is your petition, Queen Esther? Even if it be half the kingdom, it shall be granted to you." With this, the balance shifts. The king first lent his backing to Haman, and now he lends his support to Esther. The king is, in a sense, serving two masters, one male and one female, both of whom are vying to grab the reins and steer the drama their way. It is a contest played out on that dizzying precipice, with both sides parrying back and forth right up to the story's conclusion. Esther requests only that the king and Haman be her guests at a banquet she will prepare for them the next day. Haman is elated to be thus honored, one of many instances in which appearances mask the truth, hence the custom of wearing masks on Purim. However, his buoyant mood is spoiled when he espies the unbending Mordecai at the gate. Holding back his wrath, he rushes home to complain bitterly to his wife Zeresh about Mordecai's infuriating refusal to bow down to him. His honors, he tells his wife, mean nothing to him while Mordecai still stands. Why, in this action-packed saga, does the story take time out to drop in on this domestic conversation between Haman and Zeresh? Earlier in the story, the king extended his staff to Esther, and we saw a demonstration of masculine strength supporting feminine leadership. It is written that Esther dons her malchut to stand before the melech. This is often translated as Esther dons her royal robes to stand before the king. However, Kabbalistically speaking, malchut represents the female aspect of divine power. And Esther is, in essence, appearing not before King SHE-roes, but before the Melech, the divine masculine aspect of kingship. In other words, it is the union of the divine masculine and the divine feminine aspects of power that creates the miraculous pathway to the resolution of the story. The scene with Haman and Zeresh offers a contrasting example of female support in service to male ego-based leadership. Zeresh fans Haman's sense of indignation and fuels his drive for vindication by suggesting that he build a gallows 50 cubits high on which to hang his enemy the next morning. Zeresh has abdicated her moral compass, if she had one, in favor of being Haman's enabler. The 50 cubits high gallows is essentially a parody of the earlier scene of the king's support in service to a righteous cause, and the gallows itself is a staff on steroids in service to the inflated male ego. The twists and turns of the plot continue with a slapstick of cross purposes that would be funny if not so deadly serious. Haman prostrates himself before Esther to beg for mercy, and he is caught seemingly in flagrante by the king. The honors prescribed prescribed by Haman with himself in mind are conferred upon Mordecai, and the gallows prepared for Mordecai becomes the instrument of Haman's demise, upon which he and his 10 sons end up swinging. Feminine leadership has gained the battle, and the war is decisively won when the king extends his golden scepter a second time and supports Esther's request to reverse the order to destroy her people. We have located 2 kingly scepters and 1 puffed up staff, the gallows. Is there a 4th staff to complete the foursome detailed in Carla's painting? In the final closing poem, read only at the evening Megillah, it is written, "A blossom bloomed from a lulav branch," which is the frond of a date palm tree. "Behold, Hadassah," another name for Esther, "stood up to arouse the sleeping." Esther herself blooms from the 4th staff. Perhaps this hints that Esther, and by extension, all of us, contain within us both male and female principles and energies. We each have within us both the moral compass and the support and strength we need to act. The final line of the poem emphasizes the thematic importance of the contrast between Zeresh and Esther. "Accursed be Zeresh, the wife of my terrorizer. Blessed be Esther who sacrificed for me." Zeresh, a relatively minor character, gets this extraordinary last word, a final slapdown for failing to be the guiding feminine force, the Ezer Kenegdo, the helper that righteously stands opposite the husband within her marriage. In her failure to speak truth to power, contrasting so vividly with Esther's courage in doing just that, she has let down all of womankind. Surely, Megillat Esther's depiction of the right and wrong uses of masculine and feminine power contains lessons for us all. At odds with the strict code of Jewish behavior, we are enjoined on Purim to drink until we can no longer tell the difference between Haman and Mordecai. That's a whole lot more than raising a festive cup. Via the wine of forgetfulness, we are asked to become like the old man who can't recall a lifetime of activities and dwells again in his earliest childhood memories. In the end, that which was first is what will remain last. And in our long story of life on earth, what was first? In the beginning, there was God, and God was one. And then creation began, and there came differentiations between light and dark, water and sky, sun and moon, and between all living things. When we are enjoined to drink on Purim until we can no longer tell the difference between Haman and Mordecai, we are being asked to go back to the beginning, to the source, wherein the duality of light and dark, good and evil, is subsumed in the original state of oneness. Like the old man who must leave behind his colorful life and return to his maker, so must we release the story and cleave only to the spark of light at its core. We dive past the outlines of the story until even its inspiring contours are obliterated in the glory of oneness. We are asked to forgive and forget on an epic scale. For the Purim story is not just a heroic tale, nor only a manual on creating miracles, nor just a treatise on masculine and feminine power, though it certainly is all that, and all that is certainly more than enough. The Purim story is the continuation of a multi-generational conflict that began when Mordecai's ancestor, King Shaul, refused, against God's direct command, to kill Agag, king of Amalek. Thus, Agag lived to bear a son who became the great-great-great grandfather of Haman. This family feud has passed on through multiple generations on both sides of the conflict. It defines us. So when we drink to obliterate the difference between Haman and Mordecai, we are being asked to move beyond the pain of the past. Our differences are to be subsumed in the glory of oneness to a state before differentiation. We travel back to source even past the beginning of light and dark. We are no longer living under heaven with its Maya of dualities. We are no longer defined by our differences. After the Messiah, the curtain of Maya is lifted. Illusion is lifted. We are in, not under heaven, where all is one. Our drinking on Purim gives us a glimpse of that oneness before we wake up the next morning and don our differences and definitions once more. The book of Esther remains after the coming of the Messiah, for it is the vehicle designed to transport us beyond the book itself. Every year we practice releasing the words on the page, the chapters, the history, the past, and all the differences between good and evil, happy and sad, and masculine and feminine. We practice moving beyond the stories. Only what is first will remain. We are returning home at last. Thank you for watching this episode of Paint Yourself into the Picture. Please share your comments below, and I invite you to subscribe and like, and do stay in touch. My website is rebalinker.com and A2Z healingspace.com. Join us again next week for another healing conversation. Until then, remember, every obstacle is a doorway. We just need to look for the opening. Many blessings.